For me, it's all about bringing people together to create better outcomes. And I think the in-person interactions that you can create in a business environment lead to better outcomes than remote.
If I was to put you on the spot, what would your biggest criticisms of total remote working be?
Total remote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think from a company perspective, particularly if you're trying to do something different and grow, not having people together, personally, I think slows things down. I think it's very, very hard to bring people together around a goal. When things change, you have to be so on point with your communication to make sure people really understand why things are changing, that it's just a really slow process. And I think if you've got people in a room together and they're feeling it and they can see why the changes are needed,
Sure.
It's just much easier to move fast and move forward with that. Actually, at JustPart, for a while we had a remote team, a remote dev team, but we were so early in our product that it just didn't really work because the product changes were so slow and that they weren't really that well understood because people weren't together and they weren't seeing and hearing what customers say, and they weren't feeling the problems in the business that were being solved by technology.
Yeah.
So that's the first one, is if you're trying to grow a business and you're trying to do it quickly, I think it will be much harder to do that if you're fully remote.
Yes.
Unless it's some of the best examples of remote work were driven by open source technology, which I think is a very specific kind of benefit of remote work. Is open source technology can develop really, really fast because you've got access to all of these developers worldwide, but most businesses don't suit that, and that's my view.
Yes,
I think from an individual perspective, for me, everything you've said is true. Loneliness and mental health, all of that is true, but I think there's like a personal development piece, which is, I think, completely lost when you're fully remote. If you want to grow and develop quickly as a person in business, or in your career, being at home, I really think stunts your growth.
Yeah, I completely agree. So in some positions more than others, in some lines of work more than others. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. It's definitely shades of grey, but I think as a rule, if you're ambitious and you want to develop quickly, being around an environment with people more senior than you or different teams, it just gives you development that you just cannot get if you're remote. I think
100%.
The other thing that being remote does is creates quite a transactional relationship between person and employer, and I think that can actually tend to quite a negative relationship. And I know there's lots of discussion around how to maintain well-being and culture in a remote setting, but I think by its very nature it does default to a transactional relationship, a clock in clock out kind of thing, because you're not seeing people, you're not there, you're seeing people through a video, and it's just,
I completely agree,
much harder to develop relationships.
It's amazing how structured and scheduled our lives have become in the remote working world, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
has to be.
I think back to when, like, for example, do you know, like when you're in uni, you always say the best nights out are the ones that are off the cuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
But
totally.
I'm looking back at my career, and the best lessons I learned were always the ones that happened through serendipity or spontaneity, or just didn't, unforeseen circumstances, how you react to things. And you kind of cancel a lot of that, don't you, with this scheduled,
I think that's it. That's completely, it's when you're maybe a little bit more junior than you should be, but you get invited to the meeting because you happen to be there. It's those kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's having lunch with, someone really senior because you're all sitting in the kitchen together. And it's like those kinds of things, however hard a company tries, just cannot be replicated remotely.
No, it's impossible. Yeah.
It's impossible. And I think what happened in COVID, and I think it's still happening to some extent, but it's changing, is you've got the people who are more developed in their career, who were really, really happy with the remote setup because they'd got a lot of that value out already. And for them, it meant, they might have a family, they have better work-life balance, they might live a bit further out, commutes a bit longer. But it was, in my view, at least, it was at the detriment of those younger people who would not then have the opportunities that they had when they were in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah, sure.
But I think that's all balancing out now.
Well, hopefully,
Hope
I
so.
think there will be a generation of workers who are going to be disadvantaged from this gap, because I don't think
Yeah.
we've quite conquered it yet.
No,
I
there's
think we
lots
will
of
get better
unknown.
at it. You know,
Yeah.
get better at replacing the serendipity and the water cooler effect and stuff like that. But I don't think we're quite there yet, are we? But yes, it's a really interesting topic. So what is the role of the modern workplace, do you think then, Lucy?
For me, it's all about bringing people together to create better outcomes. And I think our firm belief, I mean, clearly we're in the business, we're biased, our firm belief that the in-person interactions that you can create in a business environment lead to better outcomes than remote. That's not to say every piece of work and every interaction needs to be in person, but I think there is unique value and unique types of interactions that you cannot do remotely and you have to do
Yeah,
in
sure.
person. And that's both the serendipity, the kind of spontaneous moments that you've mentioned, but also more planned stuff. I don't know if you've ever used kind of digital whiteboarding tools, but for me, that experience is completely substandard relative to getting in a room together and
Oh,
brainstorming
yes.
something. It's just is
Absolutely.
not even close. And I think when you're trying to drive real innovation and real creativity, the remote environment for me hasn't got close to replicating the magic there. And I think that is what the future of the workplace needs to be. It needs to be intentful. It needs to enable those moments, all of those things that you cannot do at home. It needs to create an environment that they are really enhanced, so that basically people can come in and get the benefits of being in, be in a creative environment, learn from others, develop as people, create connections with people, create connections with the company. And I
Sure.
think companies of all sizes are still, as you said, they're all still very much on their journey with this. And I think, our business, we're trying to provide real leadership for companies on how they can do this.
Yeah.
But we've got, 60, 70 companies that we work with across London, and can tell you very few of them have figured it out. So it's a big journey to go on.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to get your forecast on that, actually. Like, maybe me just reach down and get the crystal ball out, and how is this going to play out, Lucy? How is it going to look in, say, 5 years?
I think 2-3 seems to be the running theme at the moment. My personal view is I think that will edge up a little bit. I don't think we'll ever end up at 5 days, but I think
No.
what we've found from some of the companies we work with is that it's really easy to forget about the benefits of being in person when you don't have to commute and you're sitting in a comfortable environment at home all day. But
Yeah.
once you do commute and you're in with all the people that you like and you're meeting new people, like, people remember that it's actually quite fun and you get quite a lot out of it. So I think once that starts happening more and more, which it already is, I think that then creates, oh, actually, maybe I'll go in tomorrow. Maybe I'll go in a bit more than I had planned. And also, business leaders, I think, now are starting to really understand the benefits more and create more structure around it. In our view, structure is so important, and you have to, I
Sure.
believe, as someone running a business, be able to say to people, this is what we expect of you and this is what we're going to give you on those days that you are coming into the office, because there's nothing worse than coming into the office and zooming a bunch of people who are sitting at home.
The worst thing is when people go into an office and still use Zoom to go on a
Yeah.
meeting with someone who's two minutes down the corridor. And I've
Well,
seen that happen. And it's just
that's
like,
also
what are you
true.
doing?
That's also true. Yeah, but I think it's like, it is a real responsibility for business leaders that I don't think they quite realised. Because I think people went into this being like, oh, great, we can give people ultimate flexibility to do whatever they want. This is such a perk. We can just say you can work wherever you want. And it's like,
Sure.
well, actually, no, that's pretty unfair on your people if you're not providing clarity and leadership. Because
Yes.
what if some people do want to come in and then you're creating an environment that's really substandard?